We'll see if those are the changes that these teams choose to make. We'll get into picks and bans for game number 2 here. And see immediately where these players wind up. Don't forget, this is a best-of-3 series, so CLG are looking to extend this series by taking this game. If Splyce win, we all go home. Me, I'm rooting for some bonus smite. I want to see CLG take it just so we get a 3rd game. But for now, the picks and bans are in Splyce's hand, and for the 2nd time, they say no to the Morrigan.
Like I mentioned before, Morrigan in the hands of Hurriwind that you mentioned, but I still expect an early jungle pick potentially. Nemesis was highly prioritized. Splyce not wanting there to be another Nemesis that they have to worry about.
Well, the Thoth will be banned by CLG, same as game number 1. Splyce looking towards the Athena. CLG last time banned Ullr in this spot. Really curious to see if they're going to go the same or they choose different. That's what I expected. I expect to see the ban of Nemesis. Just this character, too powerful.
Between all her kits, she strips away your power. That's her whole passive. She hits you with basic attacks. Actually, first picking Nuwa as opposed to the Ullr. I like this idea.
Okay. I like Nuwa. First pick potential?
So think about it this way.
Is Hurry going to play Nuwa? Hurry doesn't like Nuwa.
Well, Hurriwind, luckily for CLG, it's on the other side of things. So it's going to be TheBest yet again playing the Nuwa on Splyce.
No. Thank you for saving me if I did make that mistake. Yeah. Shout outs to teamwork. But no, I was saying, why pick the Nuwa first? I don't think Hurriwind wants to play Nuwa.
Pick Nuwa?
You're not taking it away.
I think that maybe they don't want to reveal their cards or that they just prioritize Nuwa over Ullr. Nuwa is annoying as a jungler.
Fair.
Straight and simple. It doesn't matter what player you are, what god you are. If you're trying to get next to the mid laner, Nuwa will not allow you to do it without taking an exorbitant amount of damage in return. So prioritizing that, TheBest under Splyce. Really liking that pick alongside Daji and Soul yet again for CycloneSpin.
I'll always like the Soul these days. Just powerful choice. We saw what could happen to structures and objectives earlier. Oceans becoming MVP in his own series with that Soul selection. Daji has been powerful, very much so, in Season 5. Across the way, CLG going to collect Sobek, and Sobek for CLG, I mean, I expect Cerberus to be solo because Jigz is considered one of the best Sobeks around.
I don't expect that to be 100% set in stone, though. However,
right?
fineokay can easily play either of those two gods. Sure. Yes, Jigz is more known for Sobek, but that's not to say that he's not going to run back the Cerberus yet again. His initiations was good with the blink. He found that one cleanup kill at the end of a team fight. He's able to make an impact regardless, and Sobek is one of the safest gods in the solo lane as well as passive, giving you extra protections as long as you're consistently using those basic attacks. You get a heal, you get mana back on your ultimate, you're basically staying in lane forever, even without your blue buff.
Interesting ban phase, to say the least, and get ready for this, because Season 5, there are a lot of viable gods out there that people don't trust in, and you can see right here, CLG are afraid of the Terra and the Tier. So they banned it out in Phase 2 and selected a Muzen Cobb for themselves. Love that selection. A little bit of throwback to Season 4.
I can see it, honestly, because now it's an Ullr and an Muzen Cobb looking for a lot of physical damage
Ooh, the
in
Cabrakan.
CLG. I'm expecting potentially well, actually, Ullr could be played in the jungle as well. Homiefe and Hurriwind have been doing this every time, and now Season 3 specifically, I love this Hades pick, though.
We get it!
I love this.
Splyce, now, this Hades is going to
Divios.
And we all know that. It's funny. We actually even saw on the MVP list the Hades. He's known for the character, right? Almost synonymous with the player. So we get to see some of that. Camazotz likely to be Homiefe's.
Yes, this should be a Camazotz for Homiefe. Ullr is probably going to go to Hurriwind. He has played it before in the past, even competitively, when Homiefe would normally play out Kwong. This time around, it's double physical between your mid and jungle. Not the end of the world here. Muzen Cobb here for Snoopy. It's one of his go-to gods.
Wonderful stuff here. Are you expecting a 3rd game?
I think if CLG can get some early game momentum, then yes, but if it goes to late game, it's got to go Splyce's way.
I'm just excited to see some Hades. Either way, bring us the action, Finch.
Thank you, Taco. I am also excited to see some Hades. We got CLG. We got Splyce here going into Game 2. Splyce have already won Game 1, so if they win it here, they close it out. Can a Game 3 be forced here?
I feel as though Splyce has a really strong opportunity to get their draft up and running much sooner than what CLG has opted for. There's a lot more risk versus reward involved. Whenever you're opting for an AMC and an Ullr, you're kind of letting the enemy team know all of our structured damage is coming from these physical hunters. And in Season 5 so far, physical hunters have been struggling more often than not against these mage burst and the assassin burst.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look and see which one of these two teams are going to be the one that can win this out. We want to hear what you all think about which one of these teams are going to take it. Make sure that you all are voting in that poll there in the Mixer chat. That way we can see what you all think. See if y'all are right. You know, sometimes you give us a hard time for our calls. What about your call, Mixer chat? I want to know what your call is.
Well, right now the call for CLG is to try and hope that they can get this AMC to stay alive for at least the laning phase of the map. It could be really difficult. In Season 4, we saw so much on Muzen, but with that removal of Bluestone and the transition over to the new map, he kind of just fell out of favor. He's not as dominant as what he used to be, largely because of the fact that Bluestone, not having Bluestone, prevents him from just clearing as efficiently as before.
Yeah, but there's some other teams I think might be a part of it. I mean, now there's more assassins in the jungle now too. So I mean, like with the Daji and the Camazotz, as opposed to maybe like some of the warriors, there's just so much more pressure. It feels like everyone can blow you up. So we'll see what Snoopy can do with this Muzen and whether or not this will work out for him. 5-man grouping over here though in the jungle. Divios, Cyno, they're here, as is TheBest. So they got to make sure they're being careful. Best sees it spotted out though and is going to back up. So they should all be okay.
And they knew. Splyce knew with the way that Cyno and Divios were positioned behind the wall leading to their T2 tower. It's almost like they were kind of anticipating that CLG be looking for that 5-man roam through the jungle, and rightfully so. If there's players that are going to be looking for those early game kills, it come from CLG's end because they need those.
They're the ones that are going to need that early game kill. Speaking of that early game, Hurriwind going with that tier 2 Transcendence start. That's something that we see on Ullrs a lot, but you told me before, you kind of got to play aggressive if you want to make that work.
Kind of, but not necessarily. Cyclone having the opportunity to run back this soul means that he's at least going to be pretty well set faring off against the AMC. And Hurriwind with this Ullr rush actually on the Transcendence. That's probably the more important thing to note. Looking for a little bit more damage early on, and if I'm not mistaken, probably opting for some more pots as well. 2 mana and 1 health, trying to save as much gold as possible, really get that Transcendence finished nice and early.
He is able to push up right into the face of this new wall, though, and immediately moving towards the red buff. This is what Ullr mid can do. Can out-clear these mages in the mid lane, then try and strip some of this farm away from them. We're seeing it happen right now, as well as their own red buff looks like being defended by Homiefe as well. So we'll see. Ullr pulling that red buff and can get back to that wave in time to defend it, but this could potentially hurt TheBest.
He was expecting that. Anytime you see an Ullr in the mid lane, Ullr can just bring so much pressure in mid as opposed to what you might be able to find in duo. Him not having too much teamfight presence because he doesn't have that large ultimate that these other hunters are capable of, which is probably the reason why they're making up for this fact by introducing Snoopy with a huge teamfighting ultimate. That AMC Stinger is really going to pack a punch, and the cripple effect will be great against some of the gods that Splyce has opted for.
Stinger can be scary, but jumping in as Hurriwind there mid already got the beads, and he really had to use that with Homiefe hanging around. Wasn't even enough. The dot was too strong. Homiefe gets credit for that one. They predicted at home that Splyce going to win this game. Maybe if they could have seen that first blood, they might change their mind. We'll see how it ends up going.
Hurriwind is the real savior of that play. Because that Homiefe would not have had the kill had it not been for Hurry managing to find that last auto attack onto TheBest. Best was spending so much time juking around that he wasn't able to distance himself as much as he would have liked, and because of that, he's going to end up being the first blood, and this is much sooner than what we saw in game number 1.
See if CLG can get off to a better start here. Already have first blood to help them out towards that goal. Over in the duo lane, though, we see Aror and CycloneSpin hanging out again with the soul, but this time Aror has the Cabrakan pick. This is one of those picks in the support role that can be very aggressive, can do some surprise burst damage as well, and then get some lockdown. We'll see how he can make this Cabrakan pick work out for him as Jigz and Snoopy aggress.
Again, though, it doesn't seem as though Splyce really want to try and take up these early game engagements. They'd rather just give up that farm in order to ensure their own safety. And because of that, now that they're going to have the buff timers on not only the red buff, but the purple buff as well, you can definitely expect CLG to continue punishing Splyce for having to play so passive, since they don't have the gods that can match the damage provided early on by the AMC, the Ullr, and the Camazotz.
And we've seen this buff invade happen before. This time now, Homiefe stick around in mid one more time. Jumping in his Hurriwind, doesn't quite find the axe, and gets the two-man stun. Does the best, so very well played to stay alive through that gank there in mid.
Hurriwind needed that axe. That's a kill every single time if he had actually managed to connect with it, especially since Best just had to use his purification beads. Would not be surprised to see Homiefe maybe try to swing around one more time. We'll look for another gank right before those beads come up off cooldown.
They've got some time for it. You're right. That those beads looks like maybe another 30 seconds or so before those are back up. Cyno rotating over to join the solo lane where Divios is rocking that Hades. I know Tom was excited to see it. It's something that Divios plays a lot, and he can be so strong in that solo lane. It's hard to go up against a Hades in lane. It feels like his laning phase in particular is pretty strong.
It's just, how often do you even play against Hades solo?
Sure.
It's one of those niche picks that can be incredibly strong at a competitive level, since when you're not accustomed to playing against something, sometimes it can just flat out catch you off guard. And don't get me wrong by any means, fineokay has proven to be a solid enough player. I mean, the fact that he's still in competitive goes to show that teams respect him enough to pick him up. But Divios has always got something up his sleeve, and I think that this Hades pick is part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not a shot at fineokay to say that at all. Part of what makes these pros so strong is that a lot of them they have all these reps. They've been through so many of these situations. So anytime you can cut into that even a little bit, I think it can help. And you're right. I mean, this Hades solo might be something that you don't get to play against as much as, say, Kakalin or Bologna, like you see every game.
And Warriors really, in general, just have not been the go-to pick for a lot of these solo laners so far in competitive. More often than not, looking towards the Cerberus, towards the Sobeks and the Cabrakans, and Guardians might have their place in Season 5. It's just not where you expected them to be.
Yeah, they might just be doing better over there into that solo lane. Once again, though, red buff being stripped away. Cyno forced to watch from beyond the rock as the red buff yet again walks off with someone else. He's sad to see it go.
I like that choice, though, from Cyno. Instead, looking to maybe punish Snoopy here. Doesn't have a whole lot of mana to work with. Great ultimate there from Jigz, but the purification beads are even better. Cyno going to find that kill onto Snoopy.
Yeah, nothing that Snoopy could do there, but now might get a little bit of help as the rotation comes in from Homiefe. Immediately up onto the Palau was Cyno. Started looking for the chains and does at least pull Jigz back in. Bad out of hell. Looks like for the damage, wasn't able to find it. Instead, comes back down early, and Cyno's able to get away.
A beautiful peel there by Aror. Not only popping the meditation before Cyno went up into that dodgy ultimate, but also just using that Cabrakan stun to prevent Homiefe and Jigz trying to find those last hits onto Cyno. Cyno was actually pretty low there. Great force out, though, of the Camazotz ultimate. Homiefe was most likely trying to hold on to that one for just a little bit longer.
Yeah, I don't think he felt comfortable pursuing Cyno, especially with that extra movement speed, and it looked like she was just going to be a little bit too safe. So instead, just making sure that he himself ends up being safe, but checking back in mid lane where Hurriwind has just been bullying out this new wall pick that worked out so well for the best before.
Hurriwind has to keep this pressure applied, though, because new wall, early game isn't her time to shine. It's all about that mid to late game. We saw how often Best was proccing that Soul Gem off of the new wall ultimate.
Yeah.
And anytime you're taking 900 to 1,000 damage from an unavoidable ult or being forced to use your Aegis, that is a rough spot to be in. Best knows that his advantage is going to be later on in the match. Why risk it early?
Yeah, I think it's smart of the Best to try and play this a little bit safe. He is hanging back. Unable to hang back, though, our CycloneSpin and Aror, who again are going to have to watch their buffs get taken away by Jigz and Snoopy, who aren't afraid to come fight it out here in the jungle. They are both behind a level to their direct opponents as well. Jigz level 6 to Auror's 5 and 7 for Snoopy to the 6 of CycloneSpin. Dropped the tectonic shift to try and contest, but not going to be enough.
Just a little bit short on that Cabrakan ultimate. If anything, though, I'm almost expecting Cyno to be spending a lot more time hovering the duo side of the map, just because AMC is by far the most punishable god that Cyno can really take a look at on this Daji, having the ability to just rotate immediately onto a god and them not really having any real form of escape from that damage.
for a lot of gods, their escape is like a jump or a leap, but Snoopy's going to be relying on turning around and killing you, it feels like, for him trying to get out of there. He does have movement speed on those hives to try and help him get away, but, I mean, if he's getting slowed out by the, or pulled back in by the pressure from Cyno, he might just have to try and fight his way out instead, and I think Cyno's going to like those odds.
And if you'll notice as well, just taking a glance at the itemization choices from CLG, 3 members actually leaning towards that Transcendence. Hurriwind's already got his finished off, and so he's reaping the benefits already, practically fully stacked as well. But once Homiefe and Snoopy finish off their own Transcendences, that's going to be a ton of burst damage from gods who already deal plenty of it.
Yeah, and not power, but the cooldown too. It just works on all those builds. Actually, Cyno, with his ultimate, is able to force the Bat of Hell from Homiefe, who immediately drops it just for the CC immunity more than anything else. So the junglers trade ult for ult and kind of just walk away.
Interesting enough, though, that Homiefe would feel threatened enough to burn out his own ultimate, despite it just being Divios there, probably just concerned he wouldn't be able to use that ult through the Hades silence, and the burst damage would be too much for him to handle.
Yeah, I think he might not have had enough information, you know, and just play it rather safe than sorry. Again, though, hanging out with Divios over here in the soul lane. Looks like he chose to go with that first item, Warlock Staff, for going any kind of blessing over here for the Hades. Getting this his own designated wave to farm means he's not going to have too much trouble building up those Warlock staff stacks, and we've seen those stacks make these mid laners quite tanky.
And Divios as well, he didn't even bother with a starter item. He went immediately for that Warlock Staff on the Hades, just trying to get as much early game pressure and damage and health as possible. I think health is going to be another really important asset here for this Hades pick to work out.
Here's the Gold Fury. We saw this happen last game where an objective was taken while the other team couldn't make any kind of defense. This time, though, I think I get Splyce really didn't have a way to try and fight into that one. I mean, especially over there in that dual lane where CycloneSpin has just been so far behind of Snoopy and Jigz this whole game. So instead, that one gets taken away for free. And now CLG kind of had the first real lead starting to develop here. Looks like it's about 3,000 or so gold right at that level. And that's going to help them try and expand a little bit further.
Splyce just have zero interest in trying to prevent an early game lead from CLG. They know that their current composition isn't going to be strong enough during the early game phases to try and actually punish or aggress onto CLG's draft. So they'd rather just bide their time and bide it safely. Even if it means giving up an early Gold Fury, it's still the very first one. And when you're losing a Gold Fury prior to the 10-minute mark, it's not anything too devastating that's going to prevent your team from being able to efficiently keep up.
Not all doom and gloom here for Splyce. I mean, to try and, you know, see where they might have some option late game. I mean, with the Hunters, one thing that you don't always have because you don't have that mage is some AoE. They do have, you know, Jigz with his ultimate and fineokay. Those are some big circles, but not close to like what you're getting from TheBest, potentially what you can get from CycloneSpin with his ultimate, or even Divios if he comes in too. So if Splyce can get a good fight where maybe they catch the members grouped up, even if they're falling behind early, like you said, they've still got a chance.
CLG want to pressure the advantage. It's just hard finding an opening when a team is playing so deeply underneath their own towers. And Splyce, kudos to them for not making the mistake of just shoving too deeply into their jungle. They know what they can and cannot actually farm right now and aren't risking anything else.
Once again, going to take their buffs on that left-hand side. Again, those CLG's buffs down there, they've been taking them all game long. Now they're going to start the Pyromancer, but this one, I don't think this one is going to be free. fineokay is here. Hurriwind is here as well to try and contest it. They do end up getting it, but they pay dearly for it as Homiefe gets a double kill, taking down TheBest and Aror. Pyromancer, I don't know if it's worth those 2 kills they lost.
The lack of vision ultimately ended up being the demise there for Splyce, and great punish out of CLG, actually not caring whatsoever whether or not they were actually able to steal away the Pyromancer. They knew they could punish off of the kills. Best never even got a chance to utilize that new ultimate for an escape or attempt to escape.
Another big lead here for CLG, moving up to closer to 5,000 gold. This really is so different from what we saw their last game, where Splyce were the ones who eventually opened up the game, were able to move out with a big lead after it had been close for so long. CLG are way out in front, 7,800 gold, basically 8,000 experience. I mean, that is so difficult for them to try and fight into. We're seeing that experience lead in the mid lane in particular, where Hurriwind is so far out ahead of TheBest. Palau did come out, but it really feels like Cyno's just trying to get himself out alive more than he's trying to pull anyone into a bad spot for a fight.
He lands the ultimate onto Hurriwind simply because he wants to pull those purification beads. Hurriwind not having those beads and being on Ullr, a god that already doesn't have a CC immune ult, means that he's actually punishable right now. Maybe for the next iteration of that dodgy ult being available, we might see some aggression in the mid lane.
Hurriwind does have that Crusher available with him there now. We talked about this a little bit last game. Crusher is on actually 2 members, so not only the Transcendent, but the Crusher as well, that they multiple people seem to find attractive to them. Snoopy might even be looking to build that one as well, as he started building into that pin tree. It just gets so much of what it is that you're looking for, and it's scary right now with this level 14 Ullr keeping up with fineokay and Divios over there in that solo lane. I mean, you can't touch him right now.
The only member of Splyce's team right now that's actually even or ahead is going to be Divios, but he's not able to be an actively participating member in these team fights. He's kind of just leaving it up to entrusting his teammates to not lose everything on the opposite side of the map.
Aror already out of position and already blown up. Hurriwind is the one that gets credit for it. Jigz does give up a lot of his life total too, and TheBest is happy to help try and finish that one off. Divios ended up getting him, and Snoopy fell as well. So it's a 2-for-1 so far. Finally a fight going in favor of Splyce. They actually have Homiefe as well. Double kill for TheBest. 3-for-1 in favor of Splyce.
And CLG does have vision on this red buff. They're not going to even bother trying to contest it. fineokay just getting there a little bit too late to the party. Unfortunately, everything has already happened by then, and Hurriwind eating a huge chunk of his health bar out of that combo from Divios.
That's all they needed was to win that fight 3-for-1. They could finally get their red buff. I'm sure it feels good to be able to pull that down for themselves. Gold Fury is going to be respawning shortly here. There'll only be another 10 seconds or so before that's back up on the map. Homiefe will have respawned by then, but he'll still be way back at the base. They don't have Soul here just yet, but they do have some positioning around it for right when it spawns, so they might look to pull this and try and force CLG into another fight.
The most important thing that happened in that fight, though, by far, was Best securing the last hits on 2 of those kills. Did a decent amount of damage. Speaking of damage, Cyno was thinking about it, but no longer going to be up in that Powwow ultimate.
Now fineokay is lurking in the waters and continuing to push in to the members of Splyce. He gets forced back. Tectonic Shift does lock off the escape route, but no one else from Splyce looking to put in damage. Aror kind of on his own page in whatever book they're reading right now. Homiefe going to continue trying to pressure in and make him pay for it with his life, but can't quite catch back up to him. But now it's CLG who have a chance to pull this Gold Fury, and pull it they do. No one from Splyce going to be able to contest this one.
And CycloneSpin still feeling the wrath of what that Crusher can do. Hurriwind getting a nice third ability off onto that Soul. Some great poke damage, and recognizing that Splyce had to back off so far, CLG is just going to immediately grasp that Gold Fury for themselves.
And for Splyce, after they pushed CLG back out, it kind of looked like they went in on fineokay at this point. The level 15 Sobek, who does, have some protections built up right now, got him down to half health, couldn't quite force him out, went up onto the Powwow, did Cyno, and couldn't really find anything either. Then CLG were able to come in and kind of catch them over committing. So I don't know if going in on that fineokay was the right call there.
Usually not ideal to try and aggress onto the enemy solo laner. You can kind of expect them to be a little bit more beefy, especially when it's a Guardian like Sobek, but sometimes it's just a swing and a miss, and for Splyce, they understand that they're going to have to pay the price for having lost that Gold Fury. CLG picking that one up a little bit more into the midway mark. It's going to bear some more importance.
And it is going to help them out a good bit. Now a 5,000 gold lead, so it looks to be very close with right around the highest point they've had here yet the game. Some of that had been pulled back after that team fight went Splyce's way, it looked like, but that'll even, or not even things back out, but get them back up to the lead that they had before. They're also there right for the spawn of the Pyromancer, so this one very likely going to be going their way again. And yes, it does. No one from Splyce can touch them on that one either. CLG now starting to build up this lead in their favor. Once again, it's being done on the back of objectives, Taco.
Seems as though Divios is kind of just continuing to slapbox here with fineokay, but Splyce going to take advantage of that 1 HP tower on the opposite side of the map. CycloneSpin and Cyno making quick work of it, and Snoopy, he's not about trying to lose his life at all, just immediately started falling back, waiting for the support of his own support to show up.
I believe we saw TheBest use his ultimate there as well, so maybe he was under some pressure there in mid lane, or just wanted to get an idea of where the whole team, the other team was. That does grant vision for your team and the entire enemy team as well, just to make sure that they're not up to anything, but just about everything on the map was down at that point anyway. It'll be on cooldown for a little while longer. He does have Mage's Blessing going, so he does have some cooldown in there, so not too long that he'll have to wait, but it could mean he can get aggressed on.
T1 tower still standing strong, though. With a little bit more than half health than duo lane. Probably won't be too long, though, before CLG opts to try and siege it. They do have 3 members currently hovering that side of the map, actually 4 if you count Hurriwind, but this grouping might be more so to look for a pick as opposed to an objective.
Now, this is tough here for Splyce. A lot of the times when your solo laner does a good job of staying even or at least being a good ways ahead of the rest of your team, they can come in and be a bully, but I don't know if Divios has this same opportunity here on this Hades. I mean, he's built the Warlock Staff, the Void Stone, so he does have some protections, but not as tanky as normally you get when your solo laner's rotating in those team fights.
Divios is a competent enough player, though, that if he sees an open avenue for him to immediately jump into the backline, he's going to take it almost every time. Being with a fully stacked Warlock Staff, getting that boost of additional health is going to be really important for him when he's trying to dive that backline and ultimately just be a nuisance for CLG to deal with.
Yeah, and we see him building into just more straight up protection. Now has that Breastplate of Valor finished off, looking for a little bit more on the back end of that too. So he certainly is trying to go that tanky route for him and be that backline annoyer that the Splyce team is going to need to try and force Snoopy and Hurriwind back. That's a lot of their damage in team fight, so that's how he's building. Homiefe, Hurriwind, Snoopy, y'all are not going to hurt me. That's the plan.
Also interesting to note that Best actually opted to pick up a Divine Ruin in that 3rd item slot as opposed to maybe a Spear of Desolation or some other form of penetration or even just power in general, considering that the only real sustain CLG has on their team is Homiefe with the Camazotz second ability and fineokay with the Sickle Strike on Sobek, but that's still not typically enough self-sustain to normally warrant a Divine Ruin, so it seems as though the Best really wants to just try and prevent CLG from keeping up these prolonged team fights.
Yeah, we haven't even really seen their Hunters build into any lifesteal just yet either, so that's another point that sometimes can make that anti-heal a little bit more valuable that we're not seeing present on the boys of CLG, but trying to limit some of that healing that's just present in the kits for CLG is going to be the call from Splyce there on that play. Again, we're seeing that Soul Gem being picked up. This time, though, it's going the way of CycloneSpin. Also doesn't have too hard of a time building up those stacks. Is always throwing out that Stellar Burst, so going to be able to get those built up and then start swinging.
Would not be surprised to see Best opt for it a little later on in his build as well. At the moment, it seems as though he's favoring that Obsidian Shard. A little bit more concerned about some of those prots that he needs to shred through from fineokay and Jigz. Especially since Jigz' game, though, he hasn't opted for the Blink, considering that fineokay has his own. Probably expect some Blink initiation plucks from that Sobek.
Yeah, we saw a lot of the Blink initiations, at least from the Cerberus last game, coming in and dropping his ultimate down on top too, so being able to blow him up when that happens could help. Cyno blinks in, does find at least one chain, and the Jigz is the one they pull back in. Going for his own ultimate, he finds Divios and puts him right underneath that tier 1 tower. Now he's in between 4 members, but remember, he has physical protections built up, so he is going to be able to survive for now. Lurking in the water slows him, so he immediately responds with an ultimate of his own, but it's not going to be enough to keep him alive. fineokay finds the first kill of this fight, and they pull back in Aror, trying to find the second, and Snoopy gets it.
Dodgy ultimate is great, but sometimes you don't want to pull in a Cerberus for your entire team to have to try and get away from on that ultimate.
Oh,
now,
Cyno.
Goodbye.
Goodbye is the right word for that. Plucked back in, axe stunned, and deleted. Cyno, sure, we knew you well, buddy. 5 members of CLG still standing strong against only TheBest in CycloneSpin. And every day of the week, that's going to be a Fire Giant call after that 21 minutes here into the game. No real way for the 2 lone mages of Splyce to try and defend this.
Even without any lifesteal, it's completely unnecessary. These 2 hunters just deal so much damage with their current builds that they're going to make quick work of that FG. And the best part about it all for CLG, Splyce couldn't even take the Gold Fury because they had Jigz on zoning duty.
And Jigz over there making sure that couldn't happen either. So now the Pyromancer are going to join along with the Fire Giant as CLG enjoys a near 10,000 gold lead in their favor. More like 9,000. Experience lead's getting a little scary too at 12,000 too. So CLG have the Fire Giant and a pretty hefty lead and plenty of towers on the map to take down to try and add even more gold into their pockets. Tier 2 towers in every lane, as well as the Tier 1 still standing in duo.
Game 2 bearing a lot of similarities to what we saw in game number 1, except this time it's a complete 180. It's CLG who's actually in the lead. And can't get too excited about that just yet because they still haven't tackled the most difficult part, taking down those Phoenixes.
We saw just how difficult that could be last game. Splyce, even with a lead similar to this, weren't quite able to do it on their first or second or third tries. It felt like it took them a couple attempts to finally break open that base. This time, though, CLG are going to be the ones making that pick, and they're going to have 2 hunters to help them do it. So it might not be quite as difficult for them as it was for Splyce. Tier 1 tower falls, and no one around. Same thing about the Tier 2 tower on the left. Wouldn't be surprised if they gave that one up anyway, and CLG can continue to push. They're looping around through this mid part here, not going to find anyone out of position, so instead they'll take the Tier 2 in mid, wipe all these Tier 2s off the map, and then start looking for their push.
Really like what CLG is doing. The slow play is sometimes necessary, even when you have a draft that's just been performing so dominantly in these team fight engagements. You never really want to bite off more than you can chew. It kind of got the better end of CLG in the last game, so they're just looking to not really repeat any of those same mistakes.
Now only Tier 2 tower and solo stands between them and trying to make this Phoenix Siege end up happening for them. We saw that Pyromancer buff, getting them back to where they're going just a little bit faster. This game, though, I mean, the defense from Splyce, it can happen. I mean, Aror can isolate someone with the Tectonic Shift. If Cyno can go up on the Pala, I mean, Splyce have a team that can make it happen.
And the big thing here as well is that both of the hunters on CLG have picked up Magi's blessings, so they won't have to worry about that initial dodge the ultimate. It's going to have to be someone else who forces off those bubbles, and having to put yourself out of position more likely than not in order to remove those is going to be very difficult for Splyce to actually do. And looking at it now, that duty is probably going to fall more onto Divios than anybody else.
Yeah, Hurriwind looked at that pen tree and said, yeah, I'd like just about all of them, please. Got the Brawlers, Titanbane, and the Crusher. And then, as you said, my guy's Cloak going along with it till he can try and avoid that getting pulled in by the CC. He'll have a chance to come in and threaten these towers even more, so likely Hurriwind will be the one trying to shred through these objectives, and then we'll see Snoopy looking to bring the rest of that damage for him. They're pushing those minions up to mid-wave, but they're not ready to full-on commit to pushing here. They want minions pushing down mid and pushing down in that duo lane as well to try and split up the defensive Splyce.
And already CLG looking to make work of this left-hand tower, although that was an unfortunate pluck for fineokay. Luckily enough, though, he's just too tanky to actually get punished for it.
And they have to come up here and respond to these 2 hunters going in and immediately getting blown up as Cyno. He's still alive, but only just barely. He's going to getting rushed down by fineokay. Phoenix and Duoside has already fallen. Despite fineokay probably not trying to pluck that minion. They get exactly what they want over on the left-hand side either way. Now they're coming back to mid lane and looking to try and make this push happen over here as well. Getting a little bit of lifesteal is Hurriwind. Now he can come back in and help shred this mid-Phoenix.
This siege is so disgusting, though, from CLG in comparison to what Splyce was working with in Game 1. They have 2 hunters. That is quick work being made of these Phoenix both times around. Homiefe deep in the backline just looking for best.
Yeah, he blinked in onto the best, immediately started looking for his ultimate, and has forced him and Aror away from this team fight, but the Supernova in the back was a lot to try and force them back. Still not going to be enough. Homiefe does end up finding a kill. CycloneSpin finally gets the response, but Hurriwind finds one of his own, sits Divios down for a little while, and they're going to come turn their attention back toward this mid-Phoenix. They've got a wave coming. They'll be able to keep pushing in, and only Aror and Best are here right now and try and make this defense happen. Hurriwind is getting his shots in, and Hurriwind has done it. Mid-Phoenix has fallen, and they got what they were looking for off that fire giant.
The 4 remaining members of CLG we're all sitting at around 25 to 30% health thresholds, but Splyce just couldn't afford to push up and try and punish. The CC from CLG is ultimately what prevented Splyce, I think, from wanting to go any further outside of that Phoenix range, and CycloneSpin just doing everything in his power to try and keep the Phoenix alive as long as possible. Best just being pushed so far back and out of the fight early on was ultimately the main reason why CLG were able to have such a successful Phoenix siege.
And I think we might be seeing why CLG value this double hunter comp so much. Yes, these mages are strong in that mid game, you know, once their items start coming online for them, but what's much stronger is when these hunters can push down on these Phoenixes and shred them the way that they did. Even when they didn't win the fight particularly cleanly, they were able to delete those Phoenixes. Now they've got another Fire Giant, another Pyromancer, all in their favor. They can back up and try it again.
I don't know about you, Finch, but this is quickly starting to look like a Game 3 possibility between these 2 teams, and man, oh man. CLG really just bouncing back almost effortlessly after that Game 1.
Yeah, I love the way that they're looking. And Taco, I'm not going to Vegas. I'm not a betting man. But if I were, then yes, I would say Game 3 is looking pretty likely here. CLG responding after a tough and a long game as well to be able to come back in and look strong here in this game. It's certainly not over, though. Splyce, or rather we saw last game that these defenses can happen. You can't hold them off, but if CLG do as they just did, then very likely could be seeing it happen here again in Game 3. This is where Splyce have to be talking to one another, making sure that they're staying calm in these comms, that they can regroup. Don't give up on this one as yet, but also be ready to answer this double hunter in Game 2, or Game 3 rather.
It feels as though a lot of the responsibility for tackling down this double hunter was meant to rest in Divios' hands. He's got that hide of anemia, and same could be said for Aror. It's just that these two Guardians don't specifically have enough initial burst to take those hunters out of the team fight, and their job has only been made more difficult because of those Magi's blessings. Just beautiful itemization choices out of CLG's carries.
Grouping up now for this push on the solo lane side. Splyce are set and ready for their defense, but Homiefe is going to go over and try and get some minions pushing in too. Now comes the blink in from Cyno. Now comes the pull in from Cyno. He's putting it down on a Snoopy who just beads it calm as you like and is ready to keep going, but those beads are down now, so that means they do have a chance to come in and Aror get some stuns off, TheBest as well, and maybe lock him down. There comes the tectonic shift to try and lock down fineokay, but he's just too tanky. He'll just walk right back out, none the worse for wear. Jigz does pull 2 members back.
But look at this back end. Homiefe just going completely onto Cyno. Cyno's trying to work around his own teammates for the peel. Hurriwind, though, going to be able to find Divios in all of the chaos. And Homiefe still gets Cyno in the midst of his escape.
Yeah, this is exactly how CLG would have drawn it up if they could. Homiefe finds a double kill on the back end. No one could peel off the bat. Now those double hunters have shredded the Phoenix, and nothing stands between them and the Titan. We're going to be going to a Game 3 as CLG have bounced back in Game 2.
Camazotz just seemed to be the remedy to all of CLG's woes. Homiefe did a beautiful job the entire game, just keeping constant pressure where he needed it to be.
Not just that, but Hurriwind in mid lane really shut down TheBest on that new wall. Last game, TheBest new wall was so important for them to pick up kills at the tail end of fights or to control in the middle, but this time, never even really got to that point of the game. But what about you, Chad? What do you think? Who was the MVP of Game 2? Who had CLG looking so good?
And again, we talked about Hurriwind, we talked about Homiefe. It's going to be pretty close between these two,
yeah.
I feel, but I really can't say it enough either. The smothering of Best on the new wall. Splyce knew that they were taking a more passive early game draft, but they were not expecting that much pressure to be applied so early on. Just led to CLG being able to pave the way to victory.
Let's go ahead and get it over there to Tom and Tolly on the desk so they can break down Game 2 for us.
Thanks a lot, John Finch. Tom Bettinger here with Anatoly Alexeyenok. And boy, I asked for it and I got it. Game 3 is where we're headed. But first, let's reflect on game number 2. Taco, I think, nailed it so well. The Camazotz. Very, very big deal here for CLG.
A lot of a different story than compared to game number 1 when he was playing the Bakasura. It was just true color showing of Season 3 CLGaming's Homiefe paired with Hurriwind, the aggression, their ability to play off of one another, consistently harassing TheBest, not allowing Nuwa really any sort of breathing room, and that's what you got to do. You got to pick these gods that have the long-range poke. Ullr for mid, Camazotz for Homiefe, sitting at the tower line. They tried to go for it at level 4. Didn't quite catch him there, but then they tried again. Not even like 2 minutes later, found him immediately.
That's the big key. You mentioned the range, the long range. If you look at game number 2 and game number 1, game 2 worked out well. He's playing Camazotz long range. Game number 1 didn't, and Bakasura's got to be up close and personal. So certainly the range worked out in Camazotz's favor. Homiefe looked really, really good here.
And he's going to be actually your MVP for game number 2. Homiefe switching things up, showing us that he is still one of the strongest junglers out here in North America. A player that rides off of a lot of momentum.
Yeah, he was 4-2-4 before the final push, then finds that double kill pretty much in the opponent's fountain, and that was the key there for me in the end. But this is the beginning.
Yes.
And just right away, like you said, didn't work out at first, but then the dots do their magic. And Homiefe able to go ahead and pick that one up. And then right around, continuing the fight, gets the double kill there. His first of 2 multi-kills.
It also helps when you're playing Camazotz, when
This
you
is
have
it.
another 2 heavy dose frontliners being able to absorb a lot of cooldowns, create a lot of control. Specifically, fineokay playing the Sobek Cerberus from Jigz yet again.
That's the play that I was talking about that I said I really made it towards the end. Finds the blink to the back line and then goes to just harass those players. If Homiefe doesn't wind up with that double kill right then and there, CLG probably still win. But they probably have to put a little bit more investment into it. Homie blinks to the back line, kills 2 people, and goes, hey guys, I have busted open the back door. Let's rob the bank. So...